I'm sharing a reading experience. I'm reading from a book entitled For James, and I'm sharing it with you now. I'll go through the conclusion of the book. I hope you listen and receive something worthwhile from this. This video might inspire you to read this book. It's my hope that you'll search for the best books and gain information and ideas to help you to become a better person. The more you read, the better you'll think. And the better you think, the more you'll be able to face life's challenges successfully. Conclusion. Most people have some sort of moral compass. Sometimes, however, we head off in an immoral direction. When we find ourselves in that position, it's wise to turn around, to make a change. That's what this book encourages James to do. In this book, I have demonstrated to James the following points. Number one, the word proof has no place in the discussion of God's existence or non existence, and to be appropriately used should be limited to such things as mathematics, literary writing, and alcohol. Number two, the discovery of the divine does not come through experiments, equations, or direct observation. Only by willful, studious reflection of the things taught to us through life can we begin to discover the truth. Number three, people are fallible, and what they've written down is influenced by those limitations. Holy writings may be useful in trailing a path to the discovery of God, but they are not the end all. One must actually go out and make the discovery for themselves. Number four, spontaneous generation is an antiquated theory that has been disproven over and over again. Life must start with life. Number five, the atheist's main strategy is to encourage others to doubt the evidence. If that doesn't work, they make fun of reasonable observation and personal experience. Number six, science supports the existence of God more than science can disprove the existence of God. One example of that evidence is the Big Bang Theory. People with differing education levels and experience have differing opinions, and therefore, intelligence has nothing to do with such beliefs. Beliefs have more to do with personality. Number seven, history from multiple secular and religious sources record the existence of Jesus Christ. Additionally, history has recorded that God fearing societies and ideas are beneficial to mankind, whereas history shows godless societies and ideas are harmful to mankind. Number eight, I have shown the importance of faith and how one might discover for themselves how God will be a part of their life. I have demonstrated with all this evidence that it's important to find out if God exists, and one should not shun lasting peace and joy of knowing the Lord because they're scared or hateful or have other negative traits. We determine what we see and what we seek, and what is seen and sought after tells others who we fundamentally are. In order to find eternal truth, we must be a true seeker rather than just someone justifying what they are. It's very possible to know God if we're true. Finding God is done by placing a good seed in good soil and then giving that seed the right conditions for proper growth. Without these, it's impossible to produce the good fruit of life. The Spirit is the good seed. The heart that is sincere with the intent and desire to do what's right is the good soil. Studying, pondering and praying upon spiritual things rather than the teachings of the world views are the good conditions for growth. The fruit is the knowledge of God's love for us. We must be diligent in our search if we are to have hope of Christ with us. This is a pearl of great price, not something to be traded for pleasure. It's a treasure of hope to be owned now and forever, never to be sold. We must realize that there are those who would rob us of that hope at any cost. They do not seek our freedom, as they declaim, but our captivity of a hopeless state. How we see is a learned process. We allow ourselves to see and we decide what we will reject. Our mind and mood and personality can literally change the cones and rod structures in our eyes, among other things, instantaneously. This has been observed and measured in those studying mental patients with dissociative identity disorder. Their eyes physically change with each type of personality. We sometimes fool ourselves out of experiencing truth, but the more we're willing to know, the more our sight perceives the truth about what we picture. For example, you're capable of discerning the difference between what you perceive and the thoughts and feelings you associate with that perception. Biologist Bruce Lipton, PhD, from his research at Stanford, stated that we can even modify our DNA code through our perception. Starting on page 160 of American Scientist, volume 87, you will read of the much sought after fur of Cantus lupus, the jet black Russian fox. The fur of this animal is not only a beautiful black, but it's also incredibly soft and warm. Trouble is, the animal is also incredibly mean and hard to handle. What would happen if you could breed the meanness out of them? Not only would they be easier to handle, their fur wouldn't be damaged from handlers dealing with a mean fox. In the 1950, Russian geneticists called Dmitry Konstantinovich Belay set out to breed foxes to make better fur coats by creating a tamer fox population on fox fur farms. He traveled the country collecting the tamest farm foxes that he could find. For the first generation, he had 100 females and 40 males to work with. Out of the litters produced in each generation, less than 10% of the offspring were used to make the next generation. If the cubs showed aggressive or evasive responses, even after significant human contact, they were made into fur coats. Despite human contact, these foxes were never trained to become tame. After several generations of breeding, the unexpected happened. Their personalities changed, and it was discovered they had more serotonin in their brains than other farm bred foxes. The puppies now wagged their tails and eagerly sought contact with humans. They whined, whimpered, and licked researchers just like other puppies would. And when their mind changed, so did their bodies. Even though they were purebred black foxes, they now had floppy, droopy ears. Their tails curled. They had shorter legs, a shorter snout. Their skull widened, and their coat changed from that to patterns with different coloring. They were all of a sudden cute, and their fur was no longer what people wanted for fur coats and hats. Cantus lupus, the fur coat fox, became Cantus familiaris, the house pet. Insightful self-reflection reveals faulty perceptions of the past, forcing an examination of the illusions of former eyesight. Inner healing sets the stage for the creation of new perceptions. The goal is not to be consistent with previous statements, but to be consistent to the truth as it is revealed. When we can be humble enough to do this, we begin to listen. This leads to surrendering to the truth, which causes positive changes. To have lasting peace and joy, we must have the courage and the willingness to find the light. We are defined by who we believe ourselves to be, by what we love, and by what we seek. The word evil is live, spelled backwards. Evil finds its beginnings in the mind of a person who is unable to live in the light of God's truth. Evil breeds in the dark corners of the mind and breeds fear, resulting in being separated, alone, and apart from the light and the life. On the other hand, a healthy-minded individual is one whose focus is just the opposite. They know there is a shared connectedness and unity with all life and all people. Life is viewed through the lenses of eternal love. Ideas alone are not enough. Outward religious reminders found in churches, connections with the servants of God, such as ministers, and outwardly viewed rituals are reminders of our connectedness to God. But the actual experience is always inside us. You must allow those outward reminders to penetrate your heart and your soul down to the very tissues of your body. Ideas and knowledge may be the first step, but unless the mind is prepared, they do us no good. Paul says in Philippians 4:6, never worry about anything. Instead, in every situation, let your petitions be made known to God through prayers and requests with thanksgiving. Think about this again, and then again. You don't have to seek after a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual experience. All you need to do is be aware of it and realize God is with you always. The key is this: don't settle for the snake's doubt and doubt's companions, despair and dread. The Lord wants us to be set free so we can experience life freely in all its fullness. All distracting care is part of the first sin brought into the world to oppose belief: doubt. If a person doubts there is a God, doubts they need to keep God's commandments, doubt that sin is punishable, doubts God can redeem and cleanse them from sin, that person will exclude themselves from the freedom God offers. Doubt includes such things as: one, I doubt God is real. Number two, I doubt God is even capable of helping me with my problems. Number three, I doubt I need help from God. Number four, I doubt God is even interested in me. He's not interested in my problems, and besides, I can handle my problems myself. If we allow him, God can replace these doubts with his truth. To do that, you must be willing to believe in God and acknowledge the need for God, and then accept God's forgiveness, love, and mercy, which delivers us from bondage. God is under no obligation to help us. Rather, we are under obligation to Him. What happens when anyone prays with this in mind? First, they realize their true position before the Lord and the need of a Savior. They begin to understand suffering. They begin to recognize the deceptiveness of the heart and mind. The only position anyone can have before the Lord is a position of utter humility and utter dependency. Thank the Lord God for showing and teaching all of us to be more like Him and less like the world. Care about how your future might unfold. In the short term, denial is easier than confronting hard realities. In the long term, denial can be extremely exhausting, limiting the possibility of change and ultimately cheating you out of happiness. Simply, simply open up to the truth. Once you open up to the truth, you can take a step beyond the here and now and begin to make useful, lasting change. Directing your attention towards your future and away from your past can be the start of feeling lighter and more free. Darkness can be a divine gift since light is best realized when compared to darkness. As a parent teaches disobedience from obedience, God teaches us about darkness by inviting us into the light of His grace. Just, just leap, jump, so that the loving arms of God can catch you. The more deeply and sincerely you pray and meditate, the more quickly God can connect with you, and the sooner you'll be able to live with inspiration and courage instead of the mindset of the world. God will wait patiently until then. God waits for us to make a choice so He can clear away impediments to remembering who we really are. In the meantime, there's no point in waiting, for it brings you no benefit to be stuck where you are. Get quiet. Be still. Listen for the still small voice of inspiration that will take you to your open space. When we turn everything over to God, our lives will be worth living. God says that we are His precious children, but our ego divides and separates us from God and deceives us with self-importance. For the realization that God matters, your devouring caterpillar ego must go through a conversion of becoming a beautiful butterfly. The consuming ego must humble itself to God, die, and resurrect. The ego is the dark, deceitful, dishonest, and nefarious part of you. And when you surrender and die your false self, you are reborn as a precious child of God. When I was going to college, I had a sociology professor who told us to read 2 books and do a report on them. He said, "It doesn't matter what you read because when you read anything, you're reading about the human experience." After this statement, I started to notice that. Some well known fairy tales came to my mind. One of them was the book The Adventures of Pinocchio by Carlo Collodi. This story was later made into a famous animated movie by Disney and considered one of Disney's best. In the story, Geppetto created a wooden marionette and dreams that he is his real boy named Pinocchio. The angel answers Geppetto's prayers and grants Pinocchio animation so he can show that he is brave, truthful, and unselfish. If he does show these traits, he will become a real boy. However, Pinocchio is easily led astray and falls into a group of naughty boys who takes him to Pleasure Island where there are no pesky rules to follow. There, the naughty boys make jackasses out of themselves and become enslaved. Pinocchio starts to become a jackass himself, but narrowly escapes the situation. In the meantime, Geppetto has set out to rescue his boy. They find each other, but are both swallowed by Monstro. Pinocchio devises a plan to escape, which works, but Pinocchio dies in the attempt. With this, Pinocchio has shown himself to be brave, truthful, and unselfish, and is turned into a real living boy. In the German story of Rapunzel by the Brothers Grimm, the prince jumps from the tower's window in terror into the brambles below. The thorns blind him. Many years later, he rediscovers Rapunzel, and two of her tears fall into his eyes, and his eyes become clear again. The return to God's love is the return of sight. The loss of love for God is the loss of sight. How these types of stories remind me of my relationship with life and God. The idea that God loves must be deserved is somehow a very human idea because, we've all been taught that there's no such thing as a free lunch. The scriptures tell a different story. Christ taught that heaven is a choice, not a chore. Ephesians 2:8-9 says, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not from yourselves, it is a gift from God, not by works, so that no one can boast." Good deeds are a symptom of joining God, not a requirement for joining God. To turn into an enslaved jackass, we must first push past God by overlooking him, opposing him, and renouncing him. St. Augustine of Hippo is quoted as saying, "To fall in love with God is the greatest romance. To seek him, the greatest adventure. To find him, the greatest human achievement. Yet to find him is not easy because we must be sincere. I'm the most deceitful person I know, and the one I deceive is myself." You would think that being honest with oneself would be easy, but self-honesty is the most difficult thing of all because of ego. Do I have a personal relationship with God? I do, but I'm guessing that many people have a much better relationship than I do. I hope to improve on my relationship with God, but I know our relationship could get worse, and I know I'm the one that decides that. I also know that, like a hen on an egg, I can't be forever turned over and kept warm. I must eventually fully hatch or rot and be thrown out. Can you imagine the barren lands of the Middle East when the psalmist declared, "As the hart panteth after the water brooks, so panteth my soul after thee, O God." This is what is needed to know God, a dry and burning thirst. But how do we go about it? James 4:2 says, "You have not because you ask not." But then goes on to say in the next verse, "You ask, but you don't receive an answer because you ask improperly, so you can utilize your request for your own purposes, beginning with your own selfish wants." I know I can be duped by pretenders. I know some well-honed pretenders. I do not want to be one of those pretenders when it comes to my own sincerity. I want to be open, but not gullible. I want to be critical, but not cynical. I don't want to turn away from something that I actually want or need, but I don't want to follow something or someone through self suggestion or wishful thinking. What should I do? Let's answer that with a question. How much do I hunger and thirst? How serious is the need? The answer is found in what it means to be a sincere seeker. Do I, like the hart in the hot desert sands, pant after the living water? Can I answer these questions without trying to fool myself? Do I ask myself, in what ways can I correctly search? Could it be that we only recognize God when we are in the state of need, when real need engulfs us and sensitizes our ability to reach out in a way previously unknown to us? A hungry man looks for food in a very different way than a full man. Need is like a magnet. You might say, "I'm searching." That's a very great thing to search for the truth. But what's actually being done? There must be a sense of need for something deeper in our lives. I need to be interested in how open my mind is when seeking the truth. Seeking truth is not what I should do, but who I should be. It has been said that a closed hand cannot receive. To live, you must look towards the source of life. The story of the Israelites, found in the 21st chapter of Numbers, tells us that those who refused to look at the brass serpent died, while those that believed and looked lived. The more closely one looks, the more likely they'll be able to see. We too must diligently look, not once, but every moment of our whole lives. Helen Keller was with her family escaping the summer heat in their mountain cabin. One morning, the frost of the area signaled the approaching winter. Helen, being inspired from the events, wrote The Frost King. Her family and teacher loved the story and it was published. Someone afterwards accused her of plagiarizing a story called Frost Fairies. Indeed, it was the same storyline that even contained a sentence that was word for word the same as Frost Fairies. However, Helen nor her teacher ever remembered coming across the work. There are only so many words to describe what we're thinking about. Additionally, We all seem unaware that every word and phrase we use is because of someone else. Sometimes the source is remembered, but most of the time it isn't. I am likewise influenced by what I hear, what I see, what I read. I take it in, mix it around a bit, spew some of it back out. Sometimes I add chocolate sauce with the cherry on top. This book is the same. I read it, but I might have come up with more of a conclusion than you might. It's my suggestion that if you find this material interesting, you will read it for yourself to see if you focus in on the same things. My bet is that you'll see something slightly, if not altogether, different. I wish you the best in your happy readings. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, God be with you until we meet.